For over a decade, the disappearance of Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 has haunted the world. 239 people vanished without a trace on March 8, 2014, as the Boeing 777 disappeared somewhere over the Indian Ocean. For years, governments, investigators, and conspiracy theorists have tried to locate the wreckage, yet the plane seemed to vanish into thin air. Then came Richard Godfrey, a man whose meticulous research and innovative approach have left the world stunned. Claiming he has finally pinpointed MH370's resting place, Godfrey has presented evidence that could rewrite the history of aviation mysteries. But what exactly did he discover, and how credible is his so-called proof? The story that unfolds is a mix of technical genius, satellite analysis, and decades of unanswered questions finally converging toward one shocking truth. The disappearance that shocked the world March 8, 2014, began like any other day for passengers boarding Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 in Kuala Lumpur. 227 passengers, including 12 crew members, were scheduled for a routine flight to Beijing. Family members waved goodbye at the gate, unaware that this would be the last time they would see their loved ones. The plane took off on time, communication was normal, and everything seemed ordinary. Until it wasn't. Somewhere over the South China Sea, the aircraft vanished from radar. Military radar picked up unusual turns off the planned flight path, but no distress signals were sent. For investigators, this was unprecedented. How could a commercial airliner simply disappear in the modern age of GPS tracking, radar, and transponders? Questions multiplied. Was it hijacking, mechanical failure, pilot error, or something more sinister? Every possible explanation seemed plausible, yet no definitive evidence emerged. Search efforts began immediately, with the Malaysian government coordinating with international aviation agencies. Ships, aircraft, and satellites scoured thousands of square kilometers of ocean. Yet days turned into weeks, months, and eventually years. The lack of wreckage, black box signals, or credible leads created one of the greatest aviation mysteries of the 21st century. Families demanded answers, the world demanded closure, but for a decade, the trail went cold. Experts initially focused on the aircraft's flight data, satellite pings, and fuel calculations. Using limited information, authorities created a search corridor across the southern Indian Ocean. Ships scoured the seabed, underwater drones explored wreckage zones, and extensive modeling attempted to predict the plane's path. Yet each expedition ended in disappointment. Pieces of debris washed ashore in distant locations, but these fragments offered only limited clues. No large-scale wreckage, no flight recorders, no final resting place. The aircraft seemed to have dissolved into the ocean. Amid the frustration, numerous theories emerged. Some suggested hijacking for political or personal motives. Others speculated catastrophic mechanical failure or even deliberate pilot intervention. Conspiracy theories proliferated online, ranging from secret military involvement to alien abductions. The mystery became not just a search for an aircraft, but a global obsession, a puzzle that seemed unsolvable. Enter Richard Godfrey, an independent researcher who had been studying MH370 for years. Unlike government investigators bound by bureaucratic procedures, Godfrey approached the mystery as a problem to be solved using unconventional yet highly technical methods. He combined satellite imagery analysis, ocean current modeling, and debris drift studies to triangulate potential crash zones. By integrating publicly available information with cutting-edge analysis, he claimed to have narrowed down the search to a specific region in the Indian Ocean, far more precise than previous efforts. Godfrey's methods drew attention not just for their ingenuity, but for their boldness. He relied heavily on what he calls bathymetric evidence, the study of the ocean floor's contours, combined with simulated debris drift patterns. Essentially, he mapped the ocean like a forensic investigator mapping a crime scene, asking where would wreckage logically end up? Where would a plane, descending into the depths, leave detectable traces on sonar scans and satellite imagery? His findings suggested the plane didn't vanish randomly. It followed a trajectory that, when analyzed systematically, led to a specific underwater area. Critically, Godfrey also claimed to have photographic evidence supporting his theory. Satellite images taken in the aftermath of the disappearance, previously dismissed or overlooked, showed anomalies that corresponded with his predicted location. While the images are open to interpretation, his calculations gave them context. They weren't random patterns, but potential debris signatures consistent with a Boeing 777 impact. The implications are profound. If Godfrey's analysis is correct, the world may finally know where MH370 rests. Decades of frustration and unanswered questions could come to a close. Families who have waited for closure may finally receive it. Aviation experts could learn new lessons about tracking and monitoring flights, preventing future tragedies. But the claims are not without controversy. Independent verification, governmental acknowledgement, and further underwater exploration are essential before the mystery is definitively solved. The stage is set. For years, MH370 has been the ultimate unsolved aviation mystery. Now, an independent researcher armed with technical ingenuity and a relentless pursuit of the truth may finally illuminate the dark depths of the Indian Ocean where the plane lies. Richard Godfrey's methodology, how he claims to have found MH370. Richard Godfrey's claim of pinpointing MH370's final resting place stunned aviation experts and the general public alike. But the question everyone asked was simple: how did he do it? What methods allowed an independent researcher, without government resources or massive search vessels, to arrive at a conclusion that decades of international investigations could not? The answer lies in a combination of technical brilliance, meticulous analysis, and unconventional thinking that challenged established protocols. Godfrey's methodology begins with satellite data. While governments initially used satellite pings to estimate the aircraft's trajectory, these calculations were broad, producing a massive search area spanning thousands of square kilometers. Godfrey revisited this data, focusing on subtle signals and timing inconsistencies that had been overlooked. By analyzing the Doppler shifts and signal patterns of the pings, he attempted to reconstruct the aircraft's speed, altitude, and likely flight path after it deviated from its scheduled route. This approach, though technical, provided more granular insights than previous analyses, allowing him to narrow the search corridor considerably. Next, Godfrey turned to oceanographic modeling, a tool rarely used in aviation accident investigations. MH370's wreckage had been theorized to drift across the Indian Ocean before reaching distant shores, but currents, wind patterns, and wave dynamics were complex and variable. Using sophisticated drift modeling software, Godfrey simulated how debris would move over time, starting from multiple potential crash sites. He factored in historical ocean currents, monsoon cycles, and satellite-tracked debris patterns, comparing these simulations with pieces of confirmed MH370 debris that had washed ashore. By working backward, he could triangulate the most probable area where the main wreckage must have ended up. But perhaps the most controversial and compelling part of his methodology involved bathymetric analysis. The Indian Ocean's seafloor is uneven, with underwater mountains, trenches, and ridges that can significantly affect debris settling. Godfrey studied detailed maps of the ocean floor, looking for formations that could trap debris or create anomalies detectable by sonar or satellite imaging. He argued that prior searches had failed because they treated the ocean floor as relatively uniform, ignoring natural features that could hide wreckage. By combining bathymetry with his drift and satellite analysis, he produced a much smaller, focused target area, essentially a needle in a vast ocean haystack. Richard Godfrey also analyzed anomalies in satellite imagery. Some images, dismissed by previous investigators as cloud cover or sensor errors, revealed subtle disturbances in the water's surface when viewed through the lens of his calculations. Godfrey argued that these anomalies corresponded with floating debris fields from the impact. Using advanced image processing techniques, He enhanced the contrast and patterns in the images, comparing them with debris movement models. To him, these were not random distortions. They were the first visual traces of MH370 after it entered the Indian Ocean. His methodology did not rely on any single piece of evidence, but on a convergence of multiple independent datasets. Satellite pings, debris drift analysis, oceanographic models, and bathymetric maps all pointed to the same location. This layered approach, combining physics, engineering, and environmental science, created a compelling case that went beyond speculation. It was the synergy of these methods that gave Godfrey confidence in his claim, a confidence strong enough to present it to the world, despite the high stakes and intense skepticism. Critics argue that independent analysis cannot replace formal investigations, emphasizing the need for physical verification. But Godfrey's approach highlights a broader truth: creative problem-solving, advanced modeling, and cross-disciplinary thinking can sometimes achieve what decades of traditional methods cannot. By seeing the data differently, he transformed a mystery that had seemed unsolvable into a calculated hypothesis, backed by technical reasoning rather than conjecture. Ultimately, Richard Godfrey's methodology is a masterclass in analytical persistence. It shows that the MH370 puzzle was not beyond reach. It required a fresh perspective, the courage to question established conclusions, and the tools to integrate disparate data into a coherent narrative. While verification of his findings depends on underwater exploration, his work has already shifted the conversation from despair to hope. The mystery may finally be nearing resolution, and the world is watching, stunned, as one man's innovative approach challenges the decades-long hunt for answers. The evidence Godfrey presents, satellite images, drift studies, and more. Richard Godfrey's claim to have located MH370 is not based on speculation alone. He presents what he describes as a convergence of hard evidence that supports his theory. For years, the disappearance of the plane fueled speculation, with few tangible leads. Godfrey, however, offers a multi-layered body of evidence: satellite images, drift studies, oceanographic simulations, and seafloor mapping, all pointing to a specific location in the southern Indian Ocean where the wreckage likely rests. The first piece of evidence comes from satellite imagery. Godfrey examined images taken by commercial satellites shortly after MH370 vanished. While earlier investigators largely dismissed subtle anomalies in these images, Godfrey applied enhanced image processing techniques. By adjusting contrast, removing noise, and analyzing patterns, he identified small disturbances on the ocean surface. He argues that these disturbances are not random artifacts, but evidence of floating debris from the plane's impact. Using timing and position data, he mapped these anomalies along a trajectory consistent with a flight path reconstructed from satellite pings. Next, Godfrey relies heavily on drift studies. Pieces of MH370 debris have washed ashore on islands in the Indian Ocean and along the East African coast. Godfrey collected data on confirmed debris locations, then ran extensive simulations of ocean currents and wind patterns over time. By tracing debris movement backward, he attempted to identify the likely crash site. His models, which account for variable currents, storm activity, and the density and buoyancy of debris, suggest a concentrated impact zone far smaller than the previously searched corridors. This approach is crucial because it allows for a targeted search rather than a blind, sprawling expedition across thousands of square kilometers. Bathymetric evidence is another compelling element. The southern Indian Ocean is not a flat expanse. It is a rugged, underwater landscape with mountains, ridges, and trenches. Godfrey studied detailed seafloor maps, identifying features that could naturally trap debris or distort sonar readings, explaining why prior searches may have missed the wreckage. He argues that earlier search efforts overlooked these natural obstacles, treating the ocean floor as relatively uniform. By combining his crash location estimate with bathymetric analysis, Godfrey pinpoints a zone where debris would logically settle and remain hidden from standard sonar scans. Additionally, Godfrey presents correlations between multiple independent datasets. Satellite anomalies, drift simulations, and bathymetric features all point to the same general area. This convergence strengthens the credibility of his claim. It is not based on a single observation, but on multiple, independent lines of evidence that intersect in a remarkably consistent pattern. In other words, the probability of coincidence is extremely low. He also references eyewitness and local accounts of debris sightings on remote islands. While anecdotal, these accounts provide additional confirmation for drift models, showing that wreckage followed predictable paths influenced by ocean currents and storms. By combining physical data with reported sightings, Godfrey creates a holistic picture that strengthens his theory. Despite the compelling nature of his evidence, skeptics remain cautious. Satellite anomalies can be misinterpreted, drift models rely on assumptions about currents, and oceanic mapping is still incomplete in remote regions. Yet Godfrey emphasizes that his findings are not conclusive proof. They are a roadmap for targeted exploration. In other words, his evidence identifies a precise search zone where sonar and underwater drones could finally confirm MH370's location. The most striking element of Godfrey's evidence is how it changes the conversation. For over a decade, the world accepted uncertainty as permanent, assuming the plane was lost to a vast, unsearchable ocean. Godfrey's research suggests otherwise. By combining advanced technology, oceanography, and satellite analysis, he demonstrates that the mystery is solvable. It is a call to action for governments and private explorers alike. The wreckage is out there, and with focused effort it can be found. If verified, this evidence will do more than solve a decades-old mystery. It will provide closure to families, redefine search methodologies for aviation disasters, and prove that meticulous, cross-disciplinary research can succeed where traditional approaches fail. In short, it has the potential to rewrite the history of MH370 entirely, transforming despair into hope, and leaving the world stunned by the precision of Godfrey's findings. The reactions experts, governments, and the public when Richard Godfrey first publicly presented his findings on MH370, the world's reaction was immediate and polarized. For over a decade, MH370 had been the ultimate aviation mystery, a puzzle that left families, investigators, and aviation experts frustrated and desperate for answers. Suddenly, an independent researcher claimed to have located the plane's final resting place, backed by satellite imagery, drift studies, and oceanographic simulations. But while some hailed his work as groundbreaking, others approached it with skepticism and caution. Aviation experts were the first to weigh in. Many acknowledged the sophistication of Godfrey's methodology, noting that his multi-layered approach combined disciplines that had rarely intersected in previous MH370 investigations. Satellite analysis, drift modeling, and bathymetric mapping, when integrated, could indeed provide more precise crash location estimates than traditional search corridors. Some experts praised his work as impressive and innovative, emphasizing that independent analysis could complement official investigations. Yet they also urged caution, stressing that until physical wreckage or black boxes were recovered, any claim, no matter how technically sound, remained hypothetical. Government reactions were more measured. The Malaysian government, still sensitive about previous search efforts and criticism over transparency, issued cautious statements acknowledging that independent research could provide valuable leads, but refrained from officially endorsing Godfrey's conclusions. Other aviation authorities, including the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, and civil aviation regulators in Australia and the UK, noted that verification would require underwater expeditions capable of confirming wreckage in the proposed search zone. Governments emphasized the logistical challenges, the vastness of the Indian Ocean, and the need for rigorous validation before making definitive claims. The public response, however, was electric. News outlets, online forums, and social media erupted with discussions about Godfrey's claim. Families of MH370 victims expressed a mix of hope and caution. Some saw his research as a potential breakthrough that could finally provide closure after more than a decade of uncertainty. Others worried that premature conclusions might raise expectations, only to disappoint once again if no wreckage was found. Online communities dedicated to MH370, which had long debated theories ranging from hijacking to alien intervention, shifted their focus toward analyzing Godfrey's methods, satellite images, and models. Suddenly, a new chapter in the MH370 story had opened. Conspiracy theorists had a complicated reaction. For years, alternative explanations dominated discussions, from secret military involvement to covert government cover-ups. Godfrey's approach, rooted in data and scientific modeling rather than speculation, challenged these narratives. Some skeptics dismissed his findings as another theory to be scrutinized, while others reluctantly acknowledged that the data-driven methodology presented a credible explanation unlike anything proposed before. Even within these circles, debate raged about whether Godfrey's analysis would withstand the scrutiny of formal investigation and underwater verification. Media coverage amplified the tension. Headlines proclaimed that the mystery may finally be solved, while analytical articles broke down his methods, illustrating how satellite anomalies and drift simulations could pinpoint a likely crash site. Television programs featured interviews with aviation experts, oceanographers, and data analysts debating the plausibility of Godfrey's conclusions. Public fascination with MH370, which had never fully waned, surged once more, highlighting the enduring power of this tragedy to capture the global imagination. Perhaps the most profound reaction was among search and recovery professionals. Experienced sonar operators, deep-sea explorers, and maritime specialists recognized the potential value of a targeted search zone. Many had grown frustrated with the previous decade-long blanket searches across thousands of square kilometers. Godfrey's proposed location offered a feasible, focused path for exploration, a chance to finally recover MH370 and its black boxes. It was a glimmer of hope for professionals who had long doubted that the mystery could be solved. Yet, caution remained a central theme. Across all reactions, one message was consistent: evidence alone is not enough. MH370's final verification would require rigorous, hands-on investigation, underwater scanning, deep-sea drones, and ultimately the recovery of physical debris. Until then, Godfrey's claim is compelling, data-driven, and transformative, but not absolute. The world was stunned, intrigued, and cautiously hopeful. After years of speculation, the mystery seemed within reach, yet the final chapter had yet to be written. One man's research had reignited global attention and forced experts, governments, and the public alike to reconsider everything they thought they knew about MH370. The implications of Godfrey's discovery. Richard Godfrey's claim to have located MH370 carries implications that reach far beyond the Indian Ocean. For over a decade, the disappearance of the Boeing 777 remained a cautionary tale in aviation history, a haunting example of how technology, human error, and the vastness of the ocean can combine to create an enduring mystery. If his findings are verified, the consequences will ripple across aviation, search operations, technology, and even the lives of families who have waited for closure. First and foremost, the potential recovery of MH370 would provide closure for the families of the 239 victims. For years, they endured not only grief, but the uncertainty of not knowing what happened to their loved ones. The ambiguity fueled decades of speculation and emotional turmoil. Finding the wreckage could confirm the final moments of the aircraft and passengers, giving families tangible answers and the opportunity to grieve fully and definitively. In a tragedy defined by mystery, closure is priceless, and Godfrey's work brings it within reach. From an aviation safety perspective, his discovery could prompt significant changes in how aircraft are tracked over remote areas. Despite advances in satellite tracking, H370 exposed vulnerabilities in aviation monitoring, particularly over oceans. Airlines and regulators may now invest in more robust real-time flight tracking systems, including continuous satellite communication for all commercial flights. Godfrey's methodology highlights how analyzing data from multiple sources, satellite pings, debris drift models, and environmental conditions can improve predictive modeling. Future flights could benefit from these lessons, potentially preventing another long-lasting disappearance. Search and recovery protocols may also be transformed. MH370 demonstrated the challenges of searching vast, inaccessible regions with limited leads. Godfrey's approach shows that combining cross-disciplinary methods, such as oceanography, satellite imaging, and drift modeling, can narrow search areas dramatically. If proven accurate, his methods could become standard in maritime and aviation search operations. Rather than launching blanket searches across thousands of square kilometers, investigators could apply similar modeling to future incidents, increasing efficiency and reducing cost while improving the likelihood of successful recovery. The discovery also raises questions about the role of independent researchers in global investigations. Traditionally, governments and aviation authorities controlled the search for MH370, limiting access to data and restricting public participation. Godfrey's work challenges this model, demonstrating that dedicated individuals with expertise and innovative methods can contribute meaningfully to solving high-profile mysteries. This may encourage greater collaboration between official agencies and independent analysts, expanding the pool of talent applied to complex investigations. On a technological level, Godfrey's research underscores the power of data synthesis and simulation. By combining satellite imagery, ocean current models, and bathymetric mapping, he created a predictive framework that exceeded the capabilities of previous search efforts. This has implications far beyond MH370. Similar techniques could be applied to disaster response, maritime tracking, environmental monitoring, and even search and rescue operations worldwide. It's a compelling example of how advanced analytics and interdisciplinary thinking can achieve breakthroughs once considered impossible. Finally, the social and psychological impact cannot be understated. MH370 captured the world's attention because it was a mystery that defied logic, a global tragedy amplified by uncertainty. Godfrey's claim, whether ultimately confirmed or not, restores faith in human ingenuity and the power of persistent investigation. It reminds the world that even the most intractable problems can be approached creatively, that science and technology can illuminate truths hidden for decades.